Good morning, good afternoon, and good day wherever you may be joining us from. Welcome to another edition of SalesTV Live. Today, we're discussing effective mental health strategies for sales leaders. As part of our SalesTV Spotlight on mental health and sales, we're joined by Dr. Matthew Lampe, an organizational development consultant and project director at ScienceForWork. Dr. Lampe's recent article shares evidence-based research that reveals the significant impact of mental health training programs for managers. He will provide insights into how these programs enhance managerial knowledge, shift attitudes, and transform behaviors to create a supportive and stigma-free workplace. Dr. Lampe, welcome.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Adam. It's great to be here. And formalities aside, you're welcome to just call me Matt or Matthew, whatever you'd like.
Thank you for that. All right, Matt. So let's start by having you tell us a little bit more about you, your background, and what led you to where you are today.
Sure. So as you had mentioned, I have a background in organization development and organizational behavior. Spent about a decade working in retail sales, financial services, and independent consulting, working with organizations to really try to make work a little bit better. Having gone back and getting the graduate degrees, being able to really apply what that organizational behavior, what the psychology and the behavioral science research talks about, how people behave, how people act, and really what the workplace looks like. And so a lot of what I try to do is bring insights similar to today, where we look at what the academic research says, what's written in these very technical journals and articles and papers, and bringing that to non-technical audiences, finding a way to really bridge that and say, how can we apply this to really help make people's lives a little bit better?
So you're dumbing it down for me.
That's one way to look at it. I choose to look at it as bridging the academic with the practical.
All right, thank you. So, Matt, let's jump right into it. Let's clarify what is meant by mental health training for managers in the context of the article we're referencing today.
Sure. So mental health training for managers really talks about the type of support and the ways that organizations can really provide knowledge and understanding and insight for their leadership team, managers and leaders, really around what mental health looks like in the workplace, and really, quite frankly, what it looks like outside of the workplace, because it's a part of life. How you can get a better understanding of what it is, and really build practical steps to be more cognizant of it, incorporate it into the way that you coach, the way that you set expectations and targets, the way that you really develop your people and your teams. I used to think that the concept of work-life balance sort of gives this false idea of you have your work life, or you have work, and then you have life, and work is work, life is life, and the two never interact. But the reality of it is, and especially over the last few years, we've really seen that it's a blend of the two. And so being able to say, well, compartmentalize and say, well, I'm going to leave my work ideas at work and my home ideas at home, isn't actually that easy to do, if at all. And so being more aware of that and providing those managers that training, that development opportunity to really be more cognizant, more aware of how mental health impacts and the role that it plays in the lives of your people, in your teams, in your organization. It can have, when fostered and developed with beneficial support, it can have a tremendous impact, positive impact. If it's avoided, if it's disregarded, you can see a lot of the challenges that organizations may start to face, and quite frankly, a lot of organizations have faced. And over the last few years has been a great example of when you prioritize mental health for your people, it can have a positive impact on how your business operates.
So, just to make sure we're clear, we are not talking about having sales leaders or leaders in general provide any type of mental health counseling? And we're not talking about mental health counseling for the leaders. We're talking about what exactly?
Great clarification. Yes, that is correct, because um, to bring in a movie quote, with great power comes great responsibility. And if you expect your managers, or you give a false um, idea to your management team or to organizations that your managers must now provide that mental health training or that mental health counseling, that can potentially have long-term damage versus benefit. The idea here is really to um, have your organization invest in supporting your managers in their ability to recognize mental health concepts and aspects for the benefit of their people, providing the resources to say, here are things that, here's what to look for. Here's when you see these behaviors or these concepts, here are resources that you can use to help support your people in that moment. Here are the professionals to which you can refer. That's a huge piece there. And making sure that the idea here is not about training your managers to be mental health experts. It's providing your managers the resources and the knowledge to help find and identify mental health um, resources for their people, and being able to recognize, here's an opportunity where my team that I'm leading, my salespeople or whatever it might be, here are some I've noticed some different things, and so maybe we have conversations in our one-on-ones or in our check-ins, and being able to recognize, here's a point where in that conversation I need to defer to the experts, because it becomes something greater than what I can or really should be expected to do as that manager.
Got it. Now, in the research that you were sharing, you identified some ways that mental health training changes managers' approaches. How exactly are managers' approaches changed regarding supporting their teams after this training?
Sure. So effective mental health training can enhance, it can enhance the manager's understanding and the knowledge, the awareness, um, to throw in. Uh, you may be able to tell I like to throw in different quotes, different places. There was a U.S. military person who at one point had said, "You don't know what you don't know until you don't know you know it." And in a similar concept, that manager training can enhance that knowledge and bring to recognition managers' interactions that they may not have been aware of, or they may not have seen through that perspective of mental health. And so that mental health training can enhance that knowledge. It can foster empathy and encourage change in the way that they interact with their teams, the way that they create more of a supportive and inclusive workplace. And really, it can also lead to that stigma-free workplace. And so when we talk about mental health, being able to reduce that stigma, being able to share um, openly the resources and the opportunities to better ourselves through that mental health, through those mental health experts. The mental health training really for managers is about being more cognizant, more aware of all those different pieces and how they interact together, to look at something in isolation versus to look at something as a system as a whole. And it's crucial for organizations to be able to provide, again, provide their managers not necessarily with the training to do the mental health counseling or whatever it might be, but provide them with the resources to where they can direct their people for more information and really be advocates for that.
Isn't there? So obviously, this week, we're focusing on mental health, so we're all thinking about this perhaps more than we might otherwise do. Certainly, from a sort of academic and a process perspective. Aren't most of these problems solved just by people not being assholes to each other, though, in the broadest possible sense? Because, and in fact, there's a great movement in the UK. A guy called Sam Aland Corneef wrote a book called Be More Pirate. And one of the cornerstones of that is the no asshole rule, where if you have someone that's like that in the organization, they need to get out of the organization because they're doing damage. And isn't a lot of this kind of aren't we avoiding a lot of these challenges by people just being nice? I look at you and you're struggling a bit today, and I sit you down and go, "Is everything all right?" And you say, "Well, I'm really struggling with this." And I say, "Hold on, let me get you a bit of help for this." And if people behave that way, we wouldn't be having this week, would we?
I think the no asshole rule is a great rule for organizations. For actually, let's take it outside of business. Let's just say in life in general, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to be kind to one another. But part of that mental health, part of manager training regarding mental health is, well, what if you have that employee who doesn't necessarily demonstrate that they are struggling, or that they, you would just, in your example, you say, "Hey, I know you're struggling. Let's talk about it." What if that person is not giving those, um, demonstrating those behaviors that are easily recognized? What does it look like when those managers get that additional training to say, "Here's what some of those behaviors are that aren't necessarily surface level noticeable"?
Yeah,
And so you have, for example, let's take a sales, since this is sales TV, let's take a sales example. You have a salesperson who, um, over the last few months, you've noticed their numbers have slightly dipped, but not extensively. They're still hitting their targets, or they're about average. But you're noticing, that maybe their attention or their focus, the effort just isn't what it was. There could be a variety of reasons what causes that, or what leads to that, what influences that. It's the manager's ability to have those conversations when it's not necessarily directly noticeable right in front of them. Um, and the other thing, going back to that separation of work and life, and the reality that that's not really the case. Take a salesperson who has a sick child at home, a toddler at home that's got the flu, but that person still has to come into work. I would challenge somebody to say, "Oh no, their life outside of work is not bothering them right now while they're at their job, at their desk doing their job." It absolutely does.
yeah,
And having the manager training to be more aware of how different factors and different aspects of life can influence, people inside work. It can influence their behavior, and without proper support, without proper addressing, or resources available to foster that person's personal and professional development, um, some of the factors that could lead, you could start seeing organizations that start having retention problems, or start having, um, their productivity starts dropping. And when times are good, mental health training, mental health resources may not always be the top of mind, because, hey, everything looks good right now.
mm,
But in a challenging environment, especially, let's take, for example, the last 4 years, over the pandemic, during those challenging times, the organizations and the leaders and the managers that really focused and prioritized mental health, they weren't necessarily experiencing that resignation, the retention issues. They weren't dealing. They didn't have, to the same extent, um, a lot of the challenges that other organizations were facing at that time. And it's not about dealing with mental health in a reactive state. Great, now this is a challenging time, so we have to deal with this. It's about creating that type of environment ongoing and all the time, for the benefit of your people in good times and in those challenging times.
right.
So,
That makes perfect sense.
Bob Britton asks, the concept of mental well being being a positive factor for businesses seems overtly obvious. My sense is that few companies walk this talk. Why? What, in your opinion, is the roadblock here preventing this?
Oh, that's a great question, and I can think of a couple different roadblocks. One that comes to mind goes back to just sort of a lack of awareness or understanding. Why should I focus on this? Why should I allocate resources? If I'm the business leader, what's my benefit to doing it? Yeah, it sounds great to be positive and to have healthy, practices, but what's the bottom line, right? And so being able to understand, what is it that motivates the behaviors of those leaders and of those organizations, for somebody, or for teams that say, our priority is to make money. And, it you know if it's going to cost us something, we're not necessarily we're going to be hesitant to look at it. I would challenge and say, rather than looking at it as a cost, look at it as a return on investment. And there are studies out there that actually show when you invest in effective mental health training, the benefits to your organization, it can reduce some of the expenses. We already talked a little bit about, like, for example, retention, but it can also improve productivity, effectiveness, um, the organizational culture. All of these other factors can all be it can be benefited and improved. And so, to the question, what why aren't more organizations doing this? I think, um, if I had to narrow it down to something, I would say it's a combination of lack of understanding of what do I need to do, but also how do I do it. And the fun thing about this is that those questions, those answers are still being explored and uncovered. And in a sense, it's a little bit of trial by error. And I don't mean that to take mental health lightly. I'm not saying trial by error for mental health, not at all. What I'm saying is being able to reach out to those experts who know mental health programs and um, services, being able to partner with them to say, how can I bring more resources, more awareness to my organization to normalize this? Because the reality of it is we all have um, mental health affects everybody, and some more than others, but being able to have those resources, those benefits, the experts available to help navigate and guide and develop that skill.
I guess that having a clear roadmap, because conceptually we all grasp these things. A good mental health across your entire workforce and supporting people when they need extra support is blindingly obvious, and it's not a big set of dots to connect to work out that when people are happy, they're going to be more productive and more effective within their role, as well as spreading cheer amongst the organization. And when they're unhappy, that can become problematic because that unhappiness can spread, and poor feeling and all of that kind of thing. But I think, like with a lot of these things where the concept is very easy to grasp, the execution of that is sometimes extremely difficult, because I know, yeah, well, you need to call in a professional that can help this person. Okay, but where do I find that professional? Who is that professional? What are they going to do? What's the overhead look like in terms of cost and time? And is this a quick fix, or is this an ongoing fix? And do other people need to benefit from this? And all of those things. And actually, that kind of roadmap is crucial, isn't it, for organizations to actually know these are the steps you need to go through.
Right. Right. The you know it, the what does the action look like? How do I do this? What does that kind of look like? It can be it can start with something as simple as mirroring the behavior that you're wanting to encourage for your employees. And so, taking your PTO. Almost every organization has some sort of PTO, whether it's sick time, vacation time, whatever, however you want to allocate it, separate it out. But recognizing the benefit to maybe taking mental health days and saying, hey, you know what? We've been really pushing to hit our quarterly target, and maybe that week or two after that deadline, take a day or two and encourage your team to do the same. And if you plan for it and you're proactive around it, you can do it where it doesn't have a great impact on the operation for the organization to continue to do what needs to get done day to day. But what it can also do, that moment of pause and refresh for that individual. I mean, how many of us have taken a day off and it's like, oh, man, I feel refreshed.
Yeah.
All I needed was a day or two. Something as simple as that, which is already built into organizations' expenses, being able to allocate that time. That's a great place to start. When it comes to the specific training for managers, really focusing on evidence-based. There's a lot there can be a lot of programs and sales people out there that say, use this program, follow this model, and it'll work exactly the way you want. The reality is, let's look at the evidence behind it. Let's look at what does this actually do? What does this actually demonstrate? And how can we build it effectively? Working with those resources to, again, starting with just that basic understanding of what does a step one look like? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Yeah.
You alluded to the ROI. So I'm going to ask, what does the research say? What are the benefits of providing managerial training regarding mental health?
There are lots of benefits to the organizations, to the managers, to the teams. As we've talked about, it can boost that knowledge and that awareness around what mental health looks like in the workplace. That I think is one of the biggest benefits, is just having that increased awareness, recognizing what your team members, what your people may be experiencing, and what those behaviors that they're exhibiting, what that might communicate, being able to ask those questions with a curious and open mind. um, Another benefit is that it can enable effective, responsive, and proactive support. When you start to see um, different behaviors or different interactions, asking those questions and then encouraging the maybe starting with something as simple as take the afternoon off. You know what? Don't worry about today. Go enjoy a 3-day weekend. Really take time for yourself or whatever it may be. Another benefit is that it can shift those perspectives and reduce that stigma. For so long, mental health has been something that doesn't seem to be talked about enough. And we talk about the ROI for businesses when they, to offer, for example, gym reimbursements or programs to promote physical health, right? Mental health is right there with that. Why aren't we including that in those conversations? And I think that we are doing a good job of starting to include that more, but there's tremendous opportunity for that to be even greater. And really, having those conversations, having that increased awareness, starting with those small steps, those small recognitions, the small behaviors, and then building upon that, really can transform that workplace culture and the teams. Um, Again, I go back to the example of in good times, people aren't necessarily looking to leave their company. In challenging times, if your organization is not one that you feel supported, you're likely going to jump ship. And so for an organization an ROI perspective, how much money does it cost when you have to replace somebody? There's studies out there that show it can take anywhere from 3 to 9 months of salary for that individual to get a new person in place, get them trained, get them up and running, and get them back to that level of the person that you lost. Well, what if you could have avoided that? What if you could have built that workplace culture that supported those individuals, that in those challenging times they have the perspective, you know what? I'm going to hang on and we're all in this together, versus the every man for himself and they're jumping off ship. So really, the empowering managers through mental health training really can have so many benefits to organizations, to managers, and to the teams. Um, that if you start somewhere, even if you're not sure, is this the right place to start? My perspective is there doesn't have to be a one right way. Any action can lead toward that conversation and can lead towards those transformative benefits.
Mm.
And how does an organization measure those benefits? How do they measure the impact of managers getting this training on recognizing mental health?
Sure. The research article that we originally started talking about, one of the things that they really advocate, that the researchers really advocate, is measuring ways that you can measure that is really through is through talking with your employees. Find out from them, what does support look like for them? What does um, what what is it that they're looking for? And also, when you start to look at, if you're just looking, in addition to talking to them, and you're looking at your product, you can measure it with productivity, you can measure it with retention rates, you can measure it with employee satisfaction and engagement, all sorts of different ways that you can really measure this to see how are my employees doing. um, my my preference is to start with just asking the question, asking them, where can we do better? What can I do as your manager, as your leader, to better support you? I can measure it with all these different things, but if I start with that question, it's amazing. It's amazing the information that you'll get, and you may not get it with every employee, but if you start to ask that over time, and you start to demonstrate, this is the type of manager, the type of leader, the type of organization we want to be, will start to grab onto that. People will start to share, and that conversation can start. And then that's where you can learn, is really just listening to your employees.
Fantastic.
Mm.
And just like that, our time is up. Matt, this has been great. How can people learn more? Where can they get in touch with you?
Sure. LinkedIn is probably the best way for people to connect with me. Definitely, I'm active on LinkedIn and would love to engage in more conversations. Also, ScienceForWork. If you check out ScienceForWork.com, we have a lot of different blogs, a lot of different articles on a variety of topics. Really, again, connecting the research and the evidence-based insights into practical application. And we'll be coming out with a podcast soon with ScienceForWork. But as far as connecting with me, definitely check out LinkedIn.
All right. Thank you. We now have a newsletter. Don't miss an episode. Get show highlights, beyond the show insights, and reminders of upcoming episodes. You can scan the QR code on screen or visit us at SalesTV.live and click on newsletter. This has been another edition of Sales TV Live. On behalf of the panelists and everyone at Sales TV Live, to our guest, to our audience, thank you all for being an active part in today's conversation. And we'll see you